All right, hi everyone, and welcome to the Netgain Cybersecurity Training Series. During the month of October, we're publishing daily content on our blog and hosting webinars centered around National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's happening all month long, and moving forward, we'll continue to produce monthly training sessions so that you can help keep your staff cyber aware. Today's topic takes a look at what to do in a ransomware attack, which is certainly a very timely topic given all of the ransomware exposures out there today. A few housekeeping items before we jump in that I wanted to cover. I know everyone always asks, so yes, we are recording this webinar, and we'll send you a link to the webinar within the next couple of days so that you can view it and review it with your team afterward. I also encourage you to use the chat box in the sidebar to ask any questions throughout the webinar. I know our presenters today will be fielding some of those questions throughout their conversation today, so they will weave that in, but then we will also reserve that time at the end to answer any outstanding questions. As far as for the format, we're planning on around a 15-minute discussion or so with still some questions at the end so we can get you back to your day without taking up too much time. Finally, not all of the strategies and techniques that we talk about here today will be the best option for your organization. So make sure you check with your IT team or your IT partner first before implementing any of these strategies to make sure that they work best for you. I know our audience today includes a mix of industry professionals and Netgain clients. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us at Netgain, we're a strategic cloud services provider that enables healthcare practices and financial services firms to better serve their clients and patients, increase their employee productivity, and also grow their businesses. You require and deserve your IT to be ultra secure, highly reliable, and lightning fast with incredible support, compliance, and stability. And that's precisely what we deliver at Netgain, so you can rest assured that we've got your IT covered. We've come to be known for something we call the Netgain standard, and it's a set of 8 features that you see up on the screen that come standard with every solution that we offer for every client, every time. Whereas you sometimes need to pay extra for services like these if they're even available from a partner at all, they just come standard when you work with us so that you can truly gain that peace of mind when it comes to your IT. And it's as simple as that. One of these tenets that you'll see on the screen is ultra-secure protection from cyber threats, which is certainly a hot topic and of great import to you all today. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our guests for today's session, Bill Sorensen and Chris Tufto. Bill Sorensen is the Chief Strategy Officer here at Netgain, and Chris is our Chief Revenue Officer. Bill is a cloud computing industry expert with over 15 years of experience in the cloud technology space for highly regulated industries. He's created and led cutting-edge technology solutions for decades and continues to speak on cloud computing, optimized firms, and cybersecurity. Chris Tufto is a longtime cloud solutions professional as well and is the Chief Revenue Officer here at Netgain. He's responsible for bringing Netgain services and solutions to healthcare and financial services firms of all shapes and sizes that are looking to move to the cloud. My name's Phil Woken. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Netgain and will serve as the moderator for today's webinar, and I'll come back at the end to help moderate any questions that come up. So Bill and Chris, I know you're both busy guys, so welcome and thanks for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. Great to be here, and certainly excited about the ransomware training here in Cybersecurity Month, and we've really saved the, I think, the best webinar for last, I guess. And so, Bill, why don't you go through our agenda today on the training side, and then just and jump right into the content from there.
You bet. Thanks, Chris. Thanks again, Phil. Really, again, appreciate everybody taking their time today to go through this training. As we see with ransomware continuing to be the focus from exposures and incidents for organizations, it's really good, timely training. So today's agenda, we're going to cover kind of a brief description of ransomware, what the attack looks like, signs you've been attacked, what to do during the attack, We're going to take a look at the scope of an attack and how that impacts you. We're going to look at attack recovery. What do you need to do now, like today? And then how we at Netgain can help. So first, as we're going to talk through this initial starting of ransomware, the single best piece of advice you can do today in your organization, no matter where you are, is really look at and test your backup solution that you've got in place. This is something that, we're going to ask each of you to go back to your IT provider, whether they're internal or external, literally next week and get a test in place to test what happens if you get ransomware on one of the computers in the organization in the morning or one in the evening.
And I think you're going to talk about this, Bill, but there's different types of backups today too. So there's just very rudimentary type backups, but there's some pretty sophisticated backup technologies that I think we want to discuss with everybody as well. That could make a difference. So
yeah, definitely, and we'll weave that in here as well. So let's do the brief description of current ransomware. Ransomware has been around for quite a while. The concept is someone within your organization allows an application to run that they didn't know that they were doing. So typically that's via email today or a website that somebody may visit. They think it's legitimate, it's not. The website may ask them to install something or approve something, and then that installs this little piece of software called malware that runs this ransomware attack. Email phishing, which is the presentation of email to you and your staff where they believe it's from a legitimate source, but it's not, and they approve installing something on their computer. And this has gotten really, really sophisticated. The approach is really now available as ransomware as a service. You can go on the dark web and you can buy the product called ransomware. It's a significant industry in the hacker world, delivered from many countries outside the United States, and it's a significant exposure. So let's move on to the attack. What happens? What can you expect to see? So there's really 5 phases of this ransomware attack. This is a nice little description. There's the arrival phase. That's where somebody has approved the installation of this malware, this piece of software. That's again done via email mostly. So here's an interesting statistic. Over 97% of all spam email now contains ransomware. So all those spam emails that you're getting will contain a package that will be this ransomware. So really, again, focusing on training for your organization is huge. Second piece is the application starts and runs, and the way it works is it calls home to the service that's providing the ransomware and tells it it's alive and it's installed. At this point, there's kind of communication back and forth there. The third piece here is it does a search. So before it encrypts anything, it wants to see how big the impact's going to be. So if it's only your computer, and again, these are typically going to encrypt Microsoft Office documents, so that's the main target here. It's going to look through all the places you have access to, and it's going to count those documents. It's going to see the size of those documents. Some of the more sophisticated ransomware looks for what type of industry you're in to try and calculate the best ransom. The piece right after that is the encryption piece. It creates encryption keys that are unique to you. It sends them back to kind of home so that they've got a record of those. And then it begins encrypting everything in its path. Now, just before encryption, what it attempts to do, it attempts to delete all the backups that it can have access to. So any kind of backup files, if it identifies those, it's going to delete those. If you've got previous versions available to you, it's going to delete those first. So those are the things it tries to stop your recovery first. And then right after that, it begins to encrypt. Once it's done encrypting, it presents really this ransom request to you. There's a number of different screens of what that looks like, and a good example would be to just Google ransomware message and look at the images, and you can kind of see what that is.
I think, Bill, don't they give you a phone number too to call as well?
Some do, and that's this ransomware.
Like customer service.
Actually, this ransomware as a service provides an optional call center capability with that, so you can buy that as an attacker, and then that will assist you in paying the ransom. Again, just crazy to even describe it that way. But so that's the attack. That's what happens. Let's take a look at, signs of what happens during that attack and have you been attacked. So really here, your first kind of visual of something has happened may actually be that you can't open those Microsoft Office documents. And since you most likely have access to shared areas within the organization, it may be that somebody else can't open those documents. There sure are cases where somebody's left their PC running, went off to lunch, came back, and tens of thousands of files have been encrypted. And so many help desk calls have been generated from other users saying, I can't open these documents. At times, the document's extensions will change. If you go into maybe Word or Excel and show select a recent document, that document won't open. And then again, you'll see significant calls to the help desk. Most likely what you'll see at the end of this attack process, if it's happened to you, is you'll see this ransom message. If you recognize that an attack is happening to you, the immediate thing to do is disconnect from your network.
I have a story there.
Yeah.
I was at a show last week, and somebody was a healthcare show, and somebody told us a ransomware story where literally the IT director or manager came running into the room,
yeah,
right, and pulled the cord right out of the wall.
You bet.
Both the power cord and the network cord on that desktop.
Yeah.
And he ran to the next room and did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he obviously understood that they were under attack and
right.
and figured out that it was probably one of X number of computers.
Yeah.
But literally just jerked them right out of the wall. So.
And that makes sense. The way it works is that, let's say this is happening on your PC, and that's encrypting the files. If you can disconnect it from the network, it no longer has access to those files, so that encryption stops. Our belief is we want you to capture the ransom message, and so we all are carrying these smartphones with cameras. Pull that out, take multiple pictures of that so that you've got record of what's happening. Obviously, call the help desk immediately and then follow their directions to the letter. Next, let's talk about the scope. What we typically see on the scope of these is it's really related to the access each individual has. Now, in many of our industries, there's compliance and regulation around security and information access by user. The financial world calls it data loss prevention. The technology world calls it that as well, DLP for short. There's so many acronyms. So data loss prevention, and the idea there is that each user only has access to the files and folders they need for their job. And part of that goal is to restrict the impact of things like ransomware. So the scope's going to really depend on the person who got hit and what they have access to. In reality, so many users live in this shared folder environment that many of those shared folders will get hit should it not stop before it gets to the end of the ransom. So it's what you have access to. The important piece here is to have your IT group help you look at that and to make sure that the backups for the organization use special, different, protected credentials. So different ID and password for those to make sure that in a situation like this, they can't get to the backups. Next, let's talk about recovery. So, the big question, and actually this question did come in just even at the start of this, is how do I figure out if I pay the ransom? So do you pay the ransom or not? Our belief is that you don't, except in an extreme situation. You should have backups, at least from the night before. If you're involved in a service like ours, you may have backups from a very, very short time ago. We protect our customers very uniquely, so we'll talk about that at the end. The goal here is to not pay the ransom. There is no guarantee that even in paying, you get the decryption keys and you can actually do that. There's been reports that many situations the ransom has been paid and the decryption didn't happen. It's such a huge impact here that preparedness, especially now, since this is so well known, is the key.
So you want to come back, though, to probably your first slide and say, so test your backups, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of this, is test your backups, really meet with the IT department, do a table talk walkthrough of what are we going to do if it hits, if it hits a regular staff member, if it hits somebody in accounting, as well as if it hits somebody in the IT department who has tremendous amount of access. And it's good to do those walkthroughs. They're uncomfortable, but it's extremely good to do that.
And I think the other piece is, and I think it goes without saying, but and even Gartner says this, that 90% of ransomware attacks these days are lack of training.
Yes.
From an employee perspective. So training, and this is the reason why we do these training webinars. It's really, really key that you train your people on phishing and all of these different methodologies that hackers use.
Yeah, it really is, and it's not just the once-a-year training that you do historically, but we really want people to take this seriously. The impact of this is huge. If I look at, internally, what do we offer customers? We've got a ransomware data protection solution that does short-time backups, so that should an individual get hit, that recovery happens really quickly. The key thing we do is something called whitelisting, and that limits the number of, or the specific executables that can run within our environment. So obviously Microsoft Word can run, so that's whitelisted, that's listed there. The line of business applications are listed. So even in our world, if someone were to get malware and say, yes, install it, our world will stop that from running. So that's a key piece. A couple acronyms there: intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. Those significantly help stop kind of tremendous amount of volume of attacks, and we use next generation firewalls there as well. So what do you need to do now? Let's talk about that. Again, it's worthwhile to meet with your IT department or vendor and to schedule that immediately, whether it's today or tomorrow or early next week. Get that meeting on the books and get the group together. You want to discuss ransomware protection, tools, and then training. That's one of these TED Talk things where if you say it 3 times, it's important and people remember it. So we really want your staff to be trained on this. And that ends up being, you know, asking hard questions. If you get emails that seem off, call the person up and ask them. You know, do a different type of communication than the communication you got. Don't always hit accept when you go to websites and you know, you're anxious to get to whatever that website is and you get these pop-ups. Don't hit accept. And then go ahead.
And I think one of the things is key processes, especially where there's money involved or there's vacations involved or things of that nature, because hackers can monitor LinkedIn and other types of social media. So, you know, make sure that you have, you know, dual sign-off processes or specific processes where you have to talk to the person before a transaction or something happens.
Yeah.
And that's a best practice as far as being cyber secure is concerned.
It is. I think on the overall cybersecurity approach, and that's probably a good conversation to have with that vendor too, is exactly where do we sit in relation to cybersecurity across the firm. That's a little bit bigger scope than this discussion, but obviously that's key as well. I think the amount of tools out there now are good and solid. If it happens, the key piece is your ability to recover and recover extremely quickly. And then another key piece is obviously prevention, the concept of whitelisting within your organization. So number one, nobody can install something other than the IT department. Sometimes that's rough on users, but that's such a key protection mechanism here. Whitelisting, the ability to stop anything from running that's not approved. Those are key pieces as well. And then that ability to have extremely short backups that should something happen, even if it's to one individual on a laptop disconnected from the network, you've got the ability to recover those files quickly and just get back to work. That's how we're here to help as well.
Well, a question. Yeah, that's great, Bill and Chris. Thanks for all of that. We did have a couple of questions that came in. I know you also addressed a couple as you were going. So we also had Omar, who shared a story of how he got hit with a ransomware attack as well too. So it's certainly a topic of interest for sure, and with everybody on the call here. So let's start by covering a couple of those questions that we got, and then while we're doing that, if anyone else has any additional questions, please do add those into the chat box, and we'll add them to the queue. But first up, guys, Ainsley's wondering, she asks, how can I buy Bitcoin? Should I have some on hand?
You bet. So cyber currency is out there and available, and everybody is reading about it. Many people are involved in trading it, which is somewhat fascinating. So there's two options. One is to have Bitcoin on hand. The tough piece is you don't know the size. You can get a Bitcoin account set up so that you'd be able to acquire Bitcoins quickly should you need that. So that's one kind of simple way to do it. Should you be in a situation where it's an emergency, in other words, the ransomware attack has happened, you aren't able to recover to the level that you need to, you've decided as an organization to pay the ransom, there's a number of cybersecurity firms out there that are providing kind of a Bitcoin as you need it service for those specific situations. Typically, they're involved in incident response planning and then attack recovery. And if you're a firm of some size, and depending on your internal IT group or your vendor, if they provide that or not, Netgain, we provide those services. But should you have a situation where you don't have access to that, one of those security firms will be able to pay that Bitcoin ransom for you using their coin. So those are a couple options.
And I think the other piece is just keep in mind that the decryption keys may not work, even
right.
by purchasing, or paying the ransom.
Right. And when we saw the ransomware WannaCry, you've heard of that no doubt from last year. There were hundreds of thousands of people who got hit by that within a short amount of time. And in the end, there was this discussion of, well, they always, they've got to be able to give you the decryption key. It's always got to work because otherwise no one would ever pay the ransom. Well, it didn't always work. So that's one of these situations. Thanks, Phil. Good question.
Yeah, that's helpful. So let's, I'm going to skip around here then. So that leads into a question that Robert had about how often do I need to do backups and how long do I need to keep those backups?
You bet. So how often do I need to do backups? We like the idea that you're backing up the environment, changed files, every hour. Most of the enterprise level kind of commercial quality solutions can provide that. And so an hourly snapshot, they call it, an hourly backup of changed files would only expose the organization to an hour's worth of lost data, probably another couple hours worth of commotion and confusion. But those tools then also restore the files that were most recently used, so that gets people back to working quickly as well. So we like the every hour, every 15 minutes would be better, but realistically every hour's a solid solution.
Okay, good. Also, Joseph is asking, and I think, Bill, you may have covered this on a couple slides ago, but how do you, Netgain, protect and recover a client from a ransomware attack?
You bet. We offer a very short backup time frame similar to what we've been talking about. The key piece for us is protection on the way in. So we've got significant protections with the intrusion detection side, the data loss prevention tools that we have, as well as whitelisting, so that ability to stop something new from running. And then should something happen or something happen to a disconnected computer, we've got the ability to do short time backups for customers. So those items end up as significant protections for each customer. And obviously, and maybe it's not obvious, we're a hosted, really IT as a service provider, so we host everything, applications, people's desktops. Typically, we're either hosting the main application for the organization or we're hosting everything. And so we've got an environment that provides that for each user separately. Now, if you're using someone who's providing services like that, it's really worth the discussion of, would a ransomware attack run across different customers? Now, it wouldn't in our world, but we have seen just this last year a competitor who had a ransomware attack generated by one individual that ran across every customer they had. And so we need you to think about that and just ask that question. It's a hard question, but all these vendors should have the right answer for it.
Okay, great. And it looks like we've got one more question here, and then we'll work on wrapping up. Veronica is asking, is there any risk of accessing social media accounts such as Facebook on the local computer or through a Netgain environment that could result in a ransomware attack?
Typically, the focus there is on what they call spoofing these environments where you believe you're looking at Facebook, but you're not. You're looking at something else, and then getting exposed to download something. The other piece there that we've seen exposures is Facebook ads. So Facebook advertising is a significant and apparently tremendously successful environment. And so the way they work is they present an ad, you click on the ad, you're taken to a landing page. We've seen situations where those landing pages have been redirected and spoofed. So they actually send you to a ransomware or a malware infected landing page. The provider of the ad doesn't know that, Facebook doesn't know that at the time, and so there's significant exposure there as well. So those are a couple things to keep in mind. Again, if they were a Netgain customer, went to the wrong site, attempted to install that, since we do whitelisting, that would protect them. Probably the one thing too, Phil, just as a follow-up and maybe part of our wrap-up is ransomware is such a moneymaker for the hacker industry. Billions of dollars are being extracted, focused on the United States and Europe, that it's getting harder and better every day. Antivirus doesn't stop this stuff because every day, every one that comes out is new and has a different signature, a different look. So this is something we need to keep our hearts and minds on for a long time going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice, Bill, as we wrap up. I don't think I could have done that much better. So let's stop it there. And then, so on behalf of Bill and Chris and myself and the entire Netgain team, we want to thank all of you for carving out a few minutes of your busy day to join us for today's Cybersecurity Awareness Month training. As a reminder, we'll be emailing you in the next few days with a link to the on-demand replay of the webinar. In the meantime, if you do have any cybersecurity questions that we didn't cover today, certainly there's no shortage of those. Bill and Chris's contact information is up on the screen, so you can feel free to reach out to them via those channels. We also have created a lot of blog and ebook and educational and training content around various cybersecurity issues too. So you can always check out our blog at netgaincloud.com/blog for some of those resources and information, either for yourself or to share with your team as well to help keep everyone cyber aware, especially all month long here during National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So from there, we'll wrap up. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.